through scaling a business, my personal life became a hot mess quite quickly, and actually realised that there was sort of a tug of war happening and that time became my commodity very, very quickly. And so I worked to develop what we call an internal charge out rate. It's even a conversation that I have with our team members. You have to have an internal charge out rate. As you progress, as you become a manager, it's much less about time when you're employed, but much more about headspace. But for me, it's literally time. How do you find a way to work out, A, what to say yes to and what to say no to, but B, how to delegate and what to delegate within your business to really help you. And so for me, this internal charge out rate spans across my personal life and my business life, but it is the concept of having a value on your time.
I'm Hattie Willis, your host, and each episode I talk to an entrepreneur, investor, or startup expert to unpack their hardest moments, biggest wins, and hard-earned advice so we can shortcut our learnings as founders together.
I don't know about you, but one of the biggest things that stresses me out as a founder is the finances. From trying to do it all yourself in the early days and really hoping you haven't messed up that VAT return, to learning what to outsource when, I know I had questions. So I had to get Rachel Harris on the show. Not only is she insanely inspiring in how she's growing her own business, Strive X, her whole mission is to help small business owners grow. As well as being Business Barbie to her followers on Instagram, Rachel Harris is an award-winning content creator, author, speaker, business owner, and most importantly, an accountant extraordinaire. Named as one to watch on the 35 Under 35 list, and recently crowned as the first Intuition Apprenticeship Mentor of the Year for 2023, Rachel is a true breakout star in the accounting world. Rachel's passion for empowering accountants and small business owners shines through in her remarkable journey, from building the thriving accountancy community of over 25,000 people to becoming the youngest ever director and trustee of AAT. Rachel has been a trailblazer every step. She's also making an impact, including with her innovative corporate bursary scheme, launched in January 2023, which fully funds aspiring accountants in financial hardship, providing them with the mentoring and support they need to succeed. In this episode, we dive deep into Rachel's entrepreneurial journey and the invaluable lessons she's learned along the way. Together, we'll explore the power of community building and creating the support system you wish you had, what founders do and don't need to worry about when it comes to accounts, the most efficient way to pay yourself as a founder, the importance of setting an internal charge out rate to value your own time, both in the company and out of it, and approaches to value your company, and what Rachel looks for as an angel investor and trains clients to prepare for in her mock Dragon's Den investment readiness sessions. You might want to have a pen and paper to hand for this one. We hope you love it.
So, I want to get into your advice to founders, particularly about accounting, but also fundraising process, valuations. There's a ton to cover, but let's start with your story. How did you get into entrepreneurship? I know anyone who follows you already on Instagram will know that you're beautifully honest about little Rachel and what she thought her life would be versus where you are now. So can you just give us a bit of that background?
Of course. I'm super excited to be here. So thank you if you're watching or listening, whatever you're doing, if you're on a little dog walk, at the gym or commuting. We are so excited to be in your ears today. Yeah, entrepreneurship was not a straight line for me, nor was my journey into finance. I feel as a young woman who loved maths, I always felt like I didn't fit in at school, was told by a careers advisor not to go into finance because it was too boring and I had too much personality. And so, yeah, from a young age, I say young age, I'm an identical twin and she's disabled. And so I've been a carer my whole life. And through caring responsibilities, university just wasn't really on the cards for me. And so I looked at alternative options that combined my love of customer service and people and just helping people with my absolute love of maths. So as a young carer, as someone who sometimes felt like life felt chaotic, maths gave me stability, and you always know where you stand with a number. And it really gave me a lot of peace and a solid foundation in my life. So just always absolutely loved maths. I spent a lot of my life in classrooms full of boys, had to sit my A-levels when I was in year 11 because I was quite advanced, and so I had to sit in school uniform as a young woman in a room full of boys who were in like non-school uniform called sixth formers.
Oh,
but
my
yeah,
teenage heart genuinely breaks for you. That's
it was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, she also had braces, but we won't talk about that.
I got mine at uni, I feel you.
Yeah. But yeah, so absolutely fell in love with maths, did lots of like online personality types after not a great experience with a school careers advisor, and all of the personality quizzes said, you're an ISTJ. You are an introvert. You love maths. You love stability through numbers. You should definitely become an accountant. And so I applied for lots of different apprenticeships, managed to get an apprenticeship in the finance department of my local council. And yeah, the rest is history. Absolutely fell in love with maths, numbers, helping people. Did a huge part of my training at a top 75 accountancy practice. So trained at a chartered firm up to a really, really high standard, and had some frustrations along the way. I guess specifically as a young female in finance who had always felt like she belonged. I still felt a sense of that even at an accountancy practice. I'm teetotal, I don't drink. Sometimes it can feel a bit like a boys' club.
Yeah.
Interestingly, accounting and accountancy as an industry has a 50-50 male to female entry rate.
Yeah.
However, only 10% of leadership roles go to women. And so we see equality at the point of entry, but then it escalates as we go up. And so through my love of numbers, but also being quite a passionate and creative person, once I qualified as an accountant, I went on to do an MBA, which is a master's in business. And yeah, through doing that, did lots of market segmentation, marketing, and within 3 months of doing my MBA, had quit my job to start my own accountancy practice. And that was 3.5 years ago. And I'm now the owner of one of the UK's fastest scaling accountancy practices. Got an online community of over 100,000. The business is worth over £1 million, and my own personal brand is a multi-six-figure business through creating content for, about and by accountants, where I just try and lower the barriers to entry to this sort of content to encourage more people into the industry as talent, to educate more founders on the bits to be worried about versus the bits not to be worried about, and really to just hold the door open for the people that come after me. It always felt like a lot of doors were closed to me, and so just have this huge passion to give back to the industry. So I've done things like launch a bursary scheme, which this year is funding 7 placements for people who can't afford to become accountants who want to be. And yeah, just trying to do it whilst being a bit of a business Barbie along the way.
So much in there I love. We know I love the business Barbie. I've rocked up in the coolest jumpsuit ever today. I just want to almost pause there, because I just feel like I, at least, surround myself with incredible women, but even the way you just rattled off your achievements, and I know it's something you've talked about on Instagram, because every time I see a post where you're so honest about actually the battle of wanting to, I think another founder friend of mine says, hold your flowers, take your flowers, and own what you've achieved. But there is also this point of, or us being conditioned to feel that's incredibly arrogant, egotistical, and I'm not projecting this for anyone who's not listening. Rachel has talked about this feeling. I'm not telling her she should have it. But how much has that been for you a learning curve with being a founder, and what's the battle there?
It's really interesting, and I think actually it does impact women more than men. And again, you see it in the press and the media. A woman could go on a podcast and say one thing, a man could say exactly the same thing, and the response can feel and look very different. I have only, or nearly exclusively only, received negative pushback from speaking about the value of my business or how fast it scaled from men. I get comments saying I've looked at Companies House, when obviously that's out of date information. We're scaling incredibly rapidly.
Yeah.
People are so passionate to prove you wrong or to disprove what you're saying. They will go to Companies House to do it. And
what is it that your free time that
you
want to just take someone to, and to your point, like they're not doing that to men.
But even as an accountant,
I'm
an accountant. Go on Companies House. Please do. Please go on Companies House. My accounts are up to date. They're correct. As if I, as an accountant, would A, lie, or B, even put myself in a situation where I could be opened up to doing that. And so it's been hard. I think it's incredibly hard as somebody who, I was a free school meal child. I grew up in charity shop clothes. I have always really struggled to talk about money. And I have had to park my own feeling of discomfort to prioritise speaking openly. I know one other woman in the accounting industry who has a practice larger than mine. And I've made her my best friend, because it's so hard. And to even be in that place where you've driven and you've built it, but to look around and not see anyone else, and for it to literally be tumbleweed is hard. But through people, I believe money, success, whatever, is a mirror. Normally, if it's projecting something to them, it's not about me. It's because it's holding up a mirror to them. But also, I'm still going to be a millionaire, whether or not I talk about it or I don't. My business will still be worth £1 million. whether I talk about it or I don't. And so actually, I get 10, 15 DMs a week from people saying that it's helped them and saying that it's helped them to understand what's achievable. And so actually, Derek, I can probably park that feeling of, oh gosh, if that's what he thinks, that's what everybody thinks. But it's wild, and it's a piece of business that never prepared me.
Yeah, and I guess coming back to that career counsellor who said you have too much personality.
Yeah.
I mean, what you have built is a following and a huge brand. And you talked about your personal brand is actually its own business, worth a huge amount. I think founder personal branding is something I've talked a huge amount about recently.
Yeah.
We're getting asked by a lot of founders, should we be doing it? How should we be doing it? What does it look like to do it in a way that isn't just the kind of selfie on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Not to hate on selfies on LinkedIn, but I think everyone feels like that's what is expected of a founder brand. And that's not what you've done. You've done a huge amount of entertainment, education, like really rich, meaningful content. How conscious was the move to create a brand behind you? And was that seeing the value that was going to come with it, or how much has been known versus, I guess, experienced?
Yeah. So the personal brand started on the same day as the business. It was entirely intentional. So from a marketing perspective, it's always been very high level, very strategic. Personal branding is specifically important in finance because very often finance feels faceless. If we're talking about an accountant, you probably don't imagine me. You might imagine, I call them stale pale males, like middle-aged white guy in a suit with a brown carpet. And actually there is so much power to putting a face to it. And that narrative has changed over time. At the beginning, it was just me. Now it's me with a whole team. I've got offices in Manchester and Oxford, and there's a whole team of 20 accountants behind it. People don't expect it to be me. You don't expect Richard Branson to be driving the Virgin aeroplane that you go on. And so it's all just around narrative. But specifically in finance, putting a face to it was so intentional because it feels so impersonal. It doesn't feel person-centered, holistic, really, really like caring. And so having a face behind it, but also my face, because growing up, whether it was getting an accounting magazine when I was a student through the letterbox, not being able to see people that looked and felt like me was really important. And so to be able to turn up the volume on that as somebody who always tried to not hold their own flowers and turn the brightness down a little bit has been really important and actually quite healing for me as a person. But yeah, so we've taken that from just having an Instagram account going all the way up to the next level to we work with everybody. We are industry agnostic, so we don't just work with a specific type of client, but we work with celebrities, content creators, and everybody who is self-employed. And so through building my own personal brand, it's helped to attract, half the cast of Love Island All Stars this year. We're having conversations around who's your accountant, and they're there like, actually it's her. And so just mind-blowing opportunities, appearing on national TV, doing This Morning, BBC News, and putting a face to finance was always the goal.
And it strikes me as well that maybe it's a way for you to be your full self, because I think often founders forget, or it's harder for some businesses than others, but you're evolving so much. Your role is constantly changing. And I think founders sometimes forget to think about, well, what gives me energy and what part of my personality do I want to be living? And I think to your point, you've always loved the numbers, but we're told don't do it because too much personality, but actually that personality has found this beautiful creative expression. Do you love the content creation and that side of things?
I love the contrast of being told you have too much personality and then being like, okay, well, I'll see what I can do. And absolutely love the content creation side. My role now as a founder with a team of that size, I focus on community building and impact. Those are my two goals. And so content creation, I can impact literally millions of people through content every single day and build community through doing that as well. And so, content creation is definitely the bit that lights me up.
And so much of the content you share, I found very settling when you're feeling quite, well, I'll speak for myself, it's super anxious, like a founder. And I'm someone who I've had to break down my fear of Excel because I coach a lot of founders and it's quite helpful to be able to do a financial model, and actually I've learned how it can help my brain. But I'm not a numbers person. It does all slightly terrify me, but suddenly you have this huge liability as a company director, and certainly if you want to keep doing it, you have to get it right. One of the things I wanted to dive into is, what are some of the common things that you find first-time founders asking that maybe they might not be hearing enough and that they could be settled by? Like where to worry and when not to worry?
Firstly, that was the biggest compliment, that my content makes you feel calm. I feel like for a really long time, accountants have intentionally made finance feel very scary.
We can't do it.
You can't do it yourself. It feels scary, so that you, out of fear, end up getting an accountant.
Yeah.
And so the first thing would be take a deep breath. Second would be get an accountant when you want one, and get an accountant that makes you feel happy and excited about finances and makes you actually feel really, really inspired. The third is prioritize your financial well-being. And putting well-being in the same sentence as finance is incredibly intentional. When you start, you'll feel like you don't have it, you don't know where to start. Consume my content. Build and keep a financial well-being routine that makes you feel calm. For lots of people, that means logging into HMRC Government Gateway once a month to literally just check that it says 0 and that it's not, Company's House isn't bright red shouting at you. Actually, if that is something that brings you comfort and that is something that keeps you awake at night, either over communicate that to your accountant. So we have processes like every single time we get to a deadline, so every single time we file a VAT return or file a set of accounts, at the bottom of the email it says these are your next deadlines. So you can mentally be like, okay, I can park it for 3 months. So if you know what will bring you comfort, over communicate that to your accountant or build processes to make sure that you are putting that in for yourself. So literally something as simple as log in. If you are scared of outstanding taxes,
I do
into
that
your
when I
government
get
gateway.
nervous about VAT. I'm like, I'm just going to check. No, it's not due for a while.
Log in. Set financial routines like planning and saving for tax, planning and saving for VAT. Again, if you don't know how, your accountant can help you. Over communicate your communication preferences. So I'm profoundly deaf, and so from day one, lowering the barriers to entry in every way was very important to me. So as the owner of our company, I found it impossible to find a voice over internet telephone provider because everybody refused to talk to me on like live chat, and they asked me to get another decision maker to help. It was bad. And so we have built really incredible accessibility preferences into our business. So whenever we speak to a prospective client, there's multiple ways that we can talk to you if you are neurospicy in whatever way, or have communication preferences due to a disability like me. You can choose the way that you communicate. If speaking about your finances is overwhelming, you can book a walk and talk, where we both walk and talk at the same time to calm you down, or you can just answer a couple of questions and we can do it completely remotely. And so we've built just proactive touch points into the way that we approach finances to make sure if you tell us that you are neurodivergent and your inbox is a hot mess, but if I call you, I'll get you, your communication preference says, please call, not email. We ask you every touch point, how do you score us out of 10 today? And in order for us to sit here in a year's time and for you to give us a 10 out of 10, what do we need to know? Most people say, just be proactive, don't use big words. Other people say, two recently were hilarious. One, her absolute goal in life and the reason she became self-employed is to have more corgis than the Queen had. Brilliant. And every single time we speak to her, just ask her how she's getting on. And then the other one was, I spend all of my money on online courses and coaches I do not need. Every single time you speak to me, I want you to check that I haven't. Brilliant. To just bring some accountability into my business.
But I think this accountability piece from accountants is also key, because I think people are scared of looking incompetent to someone who is by their whole nature very competent. Well, hopefully. Especially at the beginning when you don't know so much. And I think this is a wider problem with startup world, and I'm definitely guilty of this, sometimes trying to get better. We all speak in a language that's shorthand because that's quicker, shorter. But actually we really exclude people by doing that. And in finance particularly, they're actually really, if you don't understand something, you don't feel you can ask, that level of anxiety is just so different. So our email defaults are to never use acronyms. Even if it's annoying, do not use an acronym, because what you think is shorthand, other people will be like Googling it. There's a couple of other points I wanted to make there as well. I think as well, the financial accountability. So when people become clients of ours, they get access to 2 one-to-many sessions, hour long every month. So the first is financial wellbeing, where all of our clients, we've got 700, get together every single month remotely on Zoom and do their financial wellbeing routine together. Obviously completely optional, but you've got something in your diary every single month to say, plan and save for tax, what's your profit,
how far through this wellbeing routine are you? And then the second is monk mode. So I do monk mode every single morning, where I just get my head down and do deep focus work. Normal people like to do it in the middle of the day, not at
Yours
5
is,
a.m.
yeah, very, very early.
So everybody gets an access to monk mode, which is just an hour on your business every single month. And so really just understanding, again, my role now sits in impact and community. That's 2 hours of my time a month, but every single client gets eyes on me, access to that routine, an opportunity to meet and network and meet other people, and just build community around financial education.
And so when you're first working with founders and they're coming in, I know one of the common questions I get asked by founders a lot, and it's obviously going to change depending on your company, is about taking a founder salary. And you talked about financial well-being, and I think there's a huge part of personal finance, and I think it's really hard to navigate. You also an angel investor and very involved in that space as well. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen and experienced about founders taking salary? Are there creative ways to do it if you don't have money in the business yet, but actually you want to be tracking your worth and showing future investors that you're valuing yourself, and what you've seen there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to answer this half as an accountant and half as a business owner. I am a huge advocate for everybody taking a salary, and not just taking a salary, but taking a salary that is a market rate that you would get anywhere else. And I'll tell you why. Again, we can do that through a mixture of salary and dividends. It doesn't have to be all salary. It's not super tax efficient. But in your P&L, there should be the market rate for your role. So whether you are scaling to exit, scaling for investment, we bootstrap the whole time. So I've never taken equity in the firm. It's all been entirely sort of self-managed. Been able to do that whilst also taking a market rate salary for my role. I have to be replaceable.
Yes.
I'm a young woman, got married 2 years ago, would love a family. I have to be able to prove to myself, to the business model and the structure, that I'm replaceable within the business. So I can step back if I want to, if I need to. If I ever wanted to exit, if I ever wanted to take investment, I have to be able to prove that if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I could replace that role pound for pound with somebody else, and that I can afford to do it. If you can't afford to replace yourself in the business at a market rate, you've just made a really shit job for yourself.
What would you say to founders? Because so part of me hugely agrees. Part of me worries that, having spoken to investors, I have some empathy. I have no empathy for the don't pay yourself a livable wage, just none. Any investor who says that is a giant walking red flag. But I do get some of the sense of, look, you know, you need to make your money on the exit as the founder, particularly in the early years when you are trying to pump back all of the profit into growth in the company, and you're not going to be able to kind of release dividends in the same way if you're scaling to venture. And for anyone who's new to these terms, you know, scaling to venture is you're really chasing becoming $1 billion business, worth $1 billion. And so part of me gets the idea that as a founder in the early days, you're probably not going to get a market rate that investors are comfortable with if you were in a really well paid, let's say you're a former banker or you're a former management consultant. You're not going to be able to take hundreds of thousands that you might have had in your day job, because the equity is the upside, but you should be able to definitely pay yourself enough to survive.
Yeah, so I'm building an angel network. I have built a due diligence process that has been FCA regulated, which actually removes discrimination, bias towards women through the process. And actually taking a founder salary is one of the biggest and most impactful elements that can discriminate specifically against women who have more than one responsibility with their time. And actually, it makes no sense. Again, I completely agree there's a difference between me saying I could get 100 grand in a job versus me actually not wanting to, not needing to.
Yeah.
But do a quality of life audit. If you do a quality of life audit that says this is how much you need to be taking out of the business to make sure that your quality of life as a founder does not suffer as a result of this business, that should be a parade of green flags to the right angel investor for you. If I was investing in a business and the founder wasn't taking what they needed, I am not going to have access to that founder for a very long time, because something is going to go wrong. And so it doesn't have to be market rate, but the goal should be to get to market rate
100%.
within 3 years.
100%.
Do a quality of life audit. Look at what you physically need to take. And even if the difference between what you physically need and the market rate comes out in a dividend at the end of the year, great. But look at what you physically need. And I think I do so much work in the angel investment venture capital space. We do business valuations, building an angel network, trying to connect really, really incredible angels to the right founders. And actually through doing that, if somebody's going to challenge something that is integral to you and the way that you're running your business, they are not your angel. And I think there's a huge, specifically with female founders, scarcity mindset around finding the right angels. And actually my job is just telling people to chill out, and actually taking investment from the wrong person is worse than taking no investment at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, do a quality of life audit, work out what's the MVP here. 100%. What do you physically need to make sure your bills are paid and to make sure your quality of life does not suffer, because the right angel will want you sustainably healthy 100%. And well for the next 3 years, when you will both benefit from you being able to, or having the capacity to, take a market rate for that role.
100% agree. And I think it's about that kind of goal piece of where are you getting to and what do you need, actually, to your point, survive to there without burning out, which I think is such a real risk. And I think this is where the the inclusion gets really broken, because if you're someone who doesn't have a financial safety net, like, never mind savings. If you have savings, it's another ball game entirely. But if you don't have any financial safety net, so literally what happens if this all goes pop, then you just aren't going to be able to function in the same way as someone who maybe even has spent their savings and is up against it, but actually they can fall back on the bank of mum and dad. They can go and live at home. And I think it really bears talking about, because how are we expecting, and there was a report recently that talked about how founders who had no plan B, in inverted commas, were much more likely to succeed, which I think is actually incredibly borne out. But this idea that we simultaneously think, oh, they do so much better, but also we're going to engineer that, I think is really messy and dangerous.
Yeah. And this is the difference, I think, between, again, like as an angel investor, I am a warm and fuzzy person, but also I want my money's worth.
Yes.
I want this business to have your undivided attention. And if it costs 50 grand, sold.
Yeah,
like
100%.
If you're taking a direct only salary, between 10 and 12k a year, depending on tax things.
Yeah.
What? I'm obviously not going to have your best self. You're going to be living in your parents' spare bedroom. This is not creating an environment where you 100%. Are built to succeed. And actually, I am buying back your capacity as a founder, as an angel.
Yeah.
Again, if you had someone that was prepared to let you do that, they're not your angel.
So, really quick piece of advice. What is the most tax efficient way currently to pay yourself as a founder?
Of course. So as a founder, and I'm assuming that's a director of a limited company, which is when we're moving into the investment space, there are two different ways to pay yourself. And we basically use both as a combination to pay yourself tax efficiently. So the first thing that we do is process what's called a director's only salary. It's a glamorous life. It's not even minimum wage. And the specific amount changes each year, but depending on your tax code and whether or not you've got other people on payroll, it'll be between £9,500 and £12,500. And what we're doing there is we're playing limbo. So every single year I do the nerdy nerd stuff, work out the number for you, and we're basically playing limbo with your personal allowance. So we're trying to maximize as much of your 0% personal allowance as we possibly can. And we're trying to make it low enough that you and the company pay zero tax on anything that's taken out.
Yeah.
We're also trying to make sure that the company doesn't incur any national insurance contributions at that point as well. We love a direct only salary because it utilises your 0% personal allowance, which dividends do not. Mm-hmm. And it's also tax deductible for corporation tax purposes for the limited company. So it's tax efficient, 0% for you. It's also tax deductible through corporation tax within the limited company. Once we've done that, we've maximised all of the 0%. On top of that, we're then going to look at dividends. Dividends is a fancy big jargon word for extracting profit from your limited company. And we love a dividend because dividends are taxed at a lower rate than normal income tax. Mm-hmm. So the first swoop is going to come out through a director's payroll. That's where either you or your accountant registers you for PAYE and processes a salary for you every single month. And then everything on top of that is going to come out as dividends.
And I think something founders often wonder is, let's say I'm not profitable yet as a company and dividends is profit. Is there a way to use some of that allowance by putting it down as almost like a director's loan? I've heard people talk about this kind of valuing yourself before the company can actually value you, even just as a point of principle. Have you seen anything there for founders who aren't yet profitable?
Yeah, of course. So again, if you're going for investment, and actually part of the deals of the investment is that you are allowed to take a salary, you can absolutely process and declare a salary. Important thing to note is, because most people have only ever encountered payroll when they've been on payroll rather than from the other side, is as an employee, you get paid on your pay date. It's important to note that if you own the business, you're a director and shareholder of the business, we can process and file payroll for you every single month, and you don't actually have to pay yourself until you have the cash to do so. So if businesses don't have cash, we'll always try and work out the most tax efficient expected profit, and we'll generally only process a payroll if we can see that money coming in. We're not just going to intentionally drive your business down and down and down in terms of reserves and equity, but we can process a payroll for you and you not pay yourself. We can just post that to a director's loan account, which means that you have, in essence, processed that salary and then lent it to the company so that it can continue putting that cash back into the business. But it is important to say dividends can only be taken from profit. That can be retained profit. So if you have been a business for 5 years and now you're pivoting, you can use retained earnings to withdraw profit, but there does have to be profit available. And if there's not, it's an illegal dividend.
Yes, beautiful. So what other questions do you get most commonly from first-time founders? Really curious. Salary, I think, is the burning one. I guess the other big thing we talked about at the beginning is valuation.
Yes.
How? and I teach this, and I'm still a bit how. Sorry to anyone I've taught this. But I guess starting with valuation, the thing I always say, which is potentially a huge cop-out, but I don't think it is that there isn't a valuation in terms of this is your valuation.
Yeah.
It's so determined by market factors, getting everyone to agree. But how do you help founders think about valuation so that it doesn't feel like this kind of black box of what are we worth?
So excited to get stuck in because, I think for me, company valuations is a very mystical part of the world. And again, very often it's an element of finance that has, I think, intentionally been made to be quite mysterious, that you can't possibly do it yourself. You must pay me £10 million to value your company for you.
And it benefits investors a bit as well if that you don't fully understand it. You can't really back it up. You can't
so when
negotiate
you're haggling, 100%. So for context, I work with businesses that are about to go on or have just come off shows like Dragon's Den, Shark Tank. I also help people to value their own businesses so that they can do angel-led raises or venture capital raises as well. So lots of, I'd say, high street accountants do not do valuations. Very often we're looking at the high level consulting space. So I have a team which is made up of an ex-Dragon from Dragon's Den's business partner, myself, and a consultant from a Big Four accounting firm. So we work together to do valuations. I head up every single valuation that we touch. It can feel very mysterious because fundamentally, like you say, it's kind of finger in the air, fag packet, whatever.
Especially earlier, right? When you don't have
100%.
maybe revenue numbers that are kind of replicable or scalable yet.
And so I think very often that can feel like the best and worst part of doing an evaluation is we are guessing. We are making incredibly data-driven, factual guesses, but they're still guesses. And that's why lots of accountants don't do valuations, because accountants love facts, they love data, they love being able to reconcile it. But we do valuations. Last year we facilitated over £10 million worth of investment, and that was all through valuations that we had done. And so there's a couple of different things. The best way to describe it, if you are a founder who feels alienated by a valuation and fundamentally doesn't understand how I could even value an idea, like you could literally pitch an idea to me and I'd be able to put a value on it. If you don't understand it, if we zoom out and we think about houses, fundamentally your house is worth whatever you can sell it for.
100%.
Full stop. So two contrasting scenarios. You're trying to sell your house. It is raining when people come and visit. You've scheduled the viewing for 3 p.m. and there's a school at the end of your road. So people are double parked. There's like angry Pilates mums shouting at each other in the road. They can't park. It's raining. Your neighbours are having an argument with their window open and it just feels very chaotic. They come in the house. Your cleaner cancelled before they came.
Someone walked
Weird
past smoking
smell,
a joint.
Funky smell. It smells like weed. Like it's just not a good day. Versus the sun is shining. It is the Easter holidays. There's no school pickup.
That's how they got in my flat. Sunny
Literally,
day, nightmare.
Bread machine is on. There's cookies in the oven. It smells great. The cleaner came. Everything is hitting. You show these people around your house and you also say, oh, in case I didn't mention, Harry Styles actually lives next door. And you're selling this to One Direction's biggest fan. Sold, probably at quadruple the valuation that you'd be able to sell it to on the bad day. In the same way that those are two contrasting experiences, I, as your neighbour or the homeowner, I can go on Zoopla. I can see what Harry bought his house for or what the neighbour the other side bought their house for. But fundamentally, it is down to me
it's still very emotional.
Sell it to put the bread machine on, make sure the sun is shining, schedule them outside of school pickup, to tell them who the neighbours are, to tell them, oh, if you want to go for a drink to discuss it afterwards, go to that really lovely pub down the road. Like, it is down to you. And so we can do things like go on Zoopla and sort of reference the price point, but your house is worth whatever you can sell it for. Your business is no different. You just like sat back in your chair.
Look, I know the accounting thing's going quite well, but what I just had a vision of is that we don't have a selling sunset in the UK, and I just feel like Rachel is ready to sell your house should you need it. Machine. Sorry, very distracted. Okay, so I love it. So valuation. So what are those equivalent bread machine cookies in the oven for founders?
Cool. So the first thing is setting the scene in terms of what people mean when they say it is worth what you can sell it for. So that is the go-to example. The second thing is very often with the finances, the reason people feel uncomfortable or the reason they're like, they dread the questions in due diligence, which we'll come on to in a sec. The reason people dread those questions is because they do not understand the valuation.
Yes.
And so what we do, we actually call our valuation model the dark arts approach because I love Harry Potter. So we call it the dark arts because it has been mystified for so long.
Yeah.
We create a tripod. So we actually use 3 completely different valuation methods.
Yeah.
We do a discounted cash flow, which is where we're looking at future cash generation within your business. We do a top-down approach and then bottom-up. They're both what they say on the tin. So we take your market, go from the top to the bottom and work on a multiple. Again, the other way around, we go from the bottom up to the top and we work on a multiple, either of revenue or profit, depending on your industry and what suits you best. So we create 3 completely separate standalone valuations. We then average them and weight them. So the total of them will come to 1. We weight them on the likelihood that they are to happen.
Yeah.
So if you're pre-revenue, discounted cash flow isn't going to be too good,
100%.
but actually top down, bottom up would give us a good figure.
Yeah.
So we weight them based on likelihood and how reasonable they are for your industry. That is giving you as a founder not just like one number to be like, I think
100%.
This is what my accountant said. We are giving you a tripod, which becomes a platform to stand on. We then also give you a valuation dashboard. So any angel that comes to you and says, what are those numbers? You say, here's my OneDrive. Here is a full dashboard of every single valuation method, the weighting, and the end valuation that you get as a founder is the weighted average of all 3 put together. So rather than you being like, I think it's this number, you're actually like, it is this number, and this is why.
Nice.
So once we've done that, we then do my favourite bit of my job ever, side quest. On my vision board, I actually have me superimposed on the lineup of Dragon's Den. So one of my goals in life is to be a dragon on Dragon's Den. And the favourite bit of my job to date is Dragon's Den simulation.
Yes.
So we then put founders into a Dragon's Den style simulation where we get 2 or 3 angels in front of them. We review the deck, we review the pitch, and we interrogate them. Intentionally being very stale, pale and male about it. Like, we ask them the questions that they do not want to be asked, normally 2 hours before they're about to go into their first pitch.
Nice.
Intentionally to ruffle them up a bit in a good way.
Yeah.
We debrief, we ask them, what didn't you know the answers to? What made you shit your pants, basically. We give, this is what you should have said. Obviously, by this point, through doing the valuation, through helping them with their pitch, all of that stuff, we have completely fallen in love with them.
Yeah.
So we're asking them questions in a very safe environment from people who we know what the right answer should be and we know the answers that they should be giving.
Yeah.
And so we build them up to that point, but we do Dragon's Den simulation. Then they go into their calls, which is obviously way less terrifying.
Yeah.
They're normally calls that we've set up with angels that have come from our network,
Nice.
who have also been trained in how to do due diligence. But due diligence, in essence, is the bit that you see on Dragon's Den. It's the questions, it's the how did you get to this number? Have you thought about this? What's your entry point to that market? What are your future plans? What are your exit plans? Due diligence is the process of asking questions.
And which of those do you find that founders are often most thrown by because they've just fundamentally misunderstood what the investor's looking for? Because I think, so for example, with financial modelling, the number one thing I hear from founders who've read a dodgy LinkedIn post saying that all financial models are worthless in the early stages because it's all made up is that they don't really understand the why. And therefore they just really struggle to actually get the most out of it, and because they're trying to use it for the wrong thing.
But again, I think that does come back to having a community as a founder. If you close your eyes and you imagine a board, like a big board meeting, it's really important to surround yourself with people that you feel so comfortable saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. I need you to explain it to me. So I've literally worked with founders who don't actually understand why having a valuation is important.
Yeah.
They don't understand that when you see people negotiate on Dragon's Den, if they go in wanting 20% and actually Stephen Bartlett wants 30, they actually don't understand what that value exchange is.
Yeah.
And so again, remembering why. Obviously, it's impossible to value an idea, but actually what we can do is give you this tripod, this structured approach to breaking it down line by line into exactly where you're coming from. But most importantly, to make sure that you understand why. So that when you do get asked that question, actually, rather than getting into a value exchange, it gives you the confidence to go back and say, we're actually having this conversation because you believe my business is worth less than I think it is. Can you tell me why?
Yeah.
That's what you should be saying as a founder if someone's trying to get more equity out of you.
And how do you see that negotiation process happening? Because to your point, it's like the house. It is like who's willing to pay what.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's another black box of like, okay, you've got your first valuation start point. Like, what now?
Yeah.
Like, how does that actually happen with angels? Can you share a bit more about that negotiation process?
Yeah, of course. And this is where I love being able to combine my love for creativity and numbers together. So we work with lots of founders to embed things like QR codes at every touch point into their pitch deck. So if there's an element of your pitch deck that, you know, LinkedIn told you should be no more than 10 pages, otherwise you'll die and never raise investment. But you want to be able to add opportunities for potential angels to be able to get more information, put QR codes in. I'd say the biggest bit of feedback I have to give people when I review their decks is to put more personality into it.
Yes, 100%.
Like, I've seen people literally write it as if they were writing their LinkedIn profile, when I, again, through this process, have completely fallen in love with who they are as a brand. And I'm there like, what are you? This is not you. This is not the business. You're going to attract the wrong angels with this deck. And so I'm constantly telling people to use smart ways like QR codes to, you know, link to a YouTube video, which is you explaining it. We've got Loom videos of founders like sat in their workshop pitching live. So if you're an angel who's tight on time, you can just flick through the pitch deck if you want to. But actually, if you just want to scan a QR code and listen to the founders in their own comfort zone, in their own space, pitch to you before you then have to go into negotiations, do that. So the first thing is making sure that the people that you are speaking to as angels have received your best self as a pitch, not a weird LinkedIn version of you. Do not do that. Again, wrong angels.
And side note, I just feel like this is actually a problem with LinkedIn, but that shouldn't be a dull version of you either, right?
Yeah.
So, but it is.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect analogy of what we expect a LinkedIn profile to be. But I do think this personality point is so important, because I think another thing founders get really confused by and read in the wrong way is that investors in the early stages are investing in you. And then I think people end up trying to be what they think the investor wants, rather than actually, to your point, using it as like a two-sided test. Do they want me? Do I want them? Is this someone I want to work with? Is this a board I can be open with and honest? Actually, you know what? I don't know what that means. Actually, you know what? I haven't thought of it like that. I'm going to go in, see what that would mean. Leave that one with me. I can't answer you right now. And I love this idea of how can you actively asking the question. Also, because I read so many pitch decks, it's so dull if they all look the same. Yeah. How can I bring more personality to this?
Yeah.
Love that.
So we were talking earlier that I have just been working with to close around through our angel network a self-portrait studio, and they had these pictures of themselves, and there was actually somebody on their board that they'd put into the deck whose photo wasn't taken in their studio. And you know, when you're like, come
this
on!
opportunity.
Yeah, so I'm on there as their finance function, but there's this other person. I was like, look, even if he's tight on time and you can't get him in the studio, superimpose it so it looks like it was shot in your studio. Like, so many little touch points that actually, as an angel, I would really care that every single person on the advisory board has known and loved that product. And it's little things like that it would be super easy to get very corporate looking headshots and put them in your deck. Like, no, that's not why people are falling in love with you. Squeeze your best self out and put that into your deck. Don't put this weird LinkedIn ChatGPT version of you.
Yes, and ChatGPT makes everyone sound the same. Please don't sound the same.
Amen. Yeah.
I can't even begin to tell you how easy it is. You have to assume everyone's going to switch off because they've read it a million times before, and you have to do something that's going to make you not switch off. Yeah.
So video pitch decks, I absolutely love. I think I am a video content creator, and so it's definitely the best way to put yourself and your best self through that. But also, remember the people that you are pitching to are angels by default. These are high net worth individuals, so they are tight on time.
100%.
Show them that you respect their time by recording something that they can listen to in 1.5 speed if they want to.
Yes, and keep it short and concise,
Yeah.
and don't use that as an excuse to then go super long.
Yeah.
Because, I've suddenly got time because I'm in front of a camera. Absolutely not. Love it. Oh, there's just so much we could go into. And, super cheekily share questions if you have them afterwards, and we'll try and get Rachel back for another
Yes.
episode, because
Oh my
I already
gosh, we'd
feel
love
like
to.
there's going to be demand. And next time we'll just do it while eating carbonara, because I sense that's
Carbs
going to
and
be
cheese. Yeah.
carbs and cheese. So I want to come back a bit actually to your personal brand and how you're actively building it, and I guess advice you would have to founders who are looking at what you've done and thinking, this is incredible, but I have no idea where to even start. Like, how would I do that? Because to your point, it has opened these incredible opportunities, speaking on This Morning, featured in Forbes, which is amazing. And I do just want, I guess, to give founders a chance. So much of your content is about making everything feel accessible to people who feel left out from it. What would be your advice to someone who feels like that content space has to look and feel a certain way? Or how do you get into it?
I think start, full stop, would be my top tip. I come from an industry that's very heavily regulated. There would be 1,000 reasons not to start. So as well as the accountancy practice, we offer mortgage advice, really high level consulting, very heavy regulations. It would be so easy for me to say it's too difficult. I can't do it. And even more so in the raising angel VC space, there's lots of very strong opinions about actually how much do you attach your personal brand to a business.
Yes.
For scaling, exit, all of those future opportunities. My opinion on that is that everything comes down to narrative. I've scaled my business from my personal brand was me selling my accounting services as a one-man band on my dining room table to a £1 million practice where actually they're probably never going to speak to me unless they pay my consulting fee. And so it's all narrative. That would have felt impossible 3 years ago.
Yeah.
How am I going to get clients to not be sticky to me? How am I going to drive that narrative? It all comes down to narrative. So as long as your personal brand and the cohesiveness between your personal brand and your business makes sense and it's not confusing, you'll be fine. But just putting yourself out there and telling that story and being very clear on who you're talking to. So for me, it's little Rachel. It's a nerdy kid who didn't have a background of privilege. My parents didn't know people in professional services where I could get work experience. Like for me, I have that very, very strong tone of voice because I know exactly who I'm talking to. And so if you're struggling on where to start, work out who you're talking to is a really good place to start.
I love that. The other things I wanted to touch on, there's just some complete gems of advice in the podcast, I guess more broadly around ways of working. One of them I'd love you to touch on because it's something I've ended up telling about 1 million founders about since I saw a clip, and I do always credit you. But you talk about this idea of setting an internal charge out rate.
Yeah.
And for me personally, this has been game changing. And bless her, one of our other guests, Lauren Curry, is amazing at being a bit of my own accountability for when she sees me put something up on Instagram about me doing something. She's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You should not be doing that. So can you explain to founders listening this idea of an internal charge out rate, how you set it and what it changes? Because for me, it's been game changing.
Okay, this is cool because I've actually got a formula. I'm not sure which soundbite.
I feel like I saw the early one.
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah. Not sure which soundbite you would have taken on, and through working with other people, have now got to a formula. So, an internal charge out rate came from me getting to the point where I was seeing quite a strong divide between my personal life and my work life in terms of priorities. So, when I was employed, I found it quite easy to keep on top of my housework, laundry, all of those things. Had the headspace to do it well, and to actually take quite a lot of joy in doing it. Through scaling a business, my personal life became a hot mess quite quickly and actually realised that there was sort of a tug of war happening and that time became my commodity very, very quickly. And so I worked to develop what we call an internal charge out rate. It's even a conversation that I have with our team members. You have to have an internal charge out rate. As you progress, as you become a manager, it's much less about time when you're employed, but much more about headspace. But for me, it's literally time. How do you find a way to work out, A, what to say yes to and what to say no to, but B, how to delegate and what to delegate within your business to really help you? And so for me, this internal charge out rate spans across my personal life and my business life. But it is the concept of having a value on your time. it's way lower than the cost that you actually charge yourself out for. But if you can do it for less than that, you should be delegating it. So in order to get to your internal charge out rate, and this is, I'm still like stress testing it. So I've done it with business owners, with employees, with my sister who earns minimum wage. I've been trying it at multiple price points to see if I can still get to a solid number.
Sensible,
So if you take the number that you withdraw from your business or earn as an employee on an annual basis, let's say it's £50,000, you cut off 3 zeros off the end, and then half the number that's remaining.
Okay.
So if you were on a £50,000 salary, your internal charge out rate would be £25.
Nice, I like it.
So if you're earning 50k, £25 is going to let you probably outsource cleaning, maybe get a VA, or maybe an entry-level administrator. And so knocking 3 numbers off, half the number that's left is a really easy, quick tick, go-to internal charge out rate. Even if you don't do all of those things straight away, it's really important to just have a measure. And you can also see through this formula that as your salary goes up, actually the benchmark of what you should be outsourcing is. So when we started 3 years ago, we were doing everything. And again, it all comes back to financial well-being and quality of life. As your salary or projected salary out of the business goes up, also what you're outsourcing does too. And this is much less about being bougie and having a cleaner. It's much more about my mental well-being, my sanity,
100%.
and fundamentally compensating me for running the business at the level that we are.
Also, some of what for me at least shifted, because I remember getting a VA who is the dog's bollocks. She's amazing.
She really is. Podcast prep.
She's exceptional. But I remember thinking, oh, how am I going to fill her time? Because I almost couldn't think about what to outsource. And so I actually gave myself a few weeks where I knew I was trying to hire someone, but I hadn't hired someone. And every time I did a task, I'd try and ask myself, could this be outsourced to a VA? Okay, I'm going to put it in the list. And I created this list before she joined of tasks, and some were one-offs, and I'd already done them, but they were there almost as a reminder of, well, this is what it could exist.
So if you're a founder and you're very busy and you're like, I don't know what this role is, or I don't know what it looks like. We scaled so rapidly, rather than outsourcing, we ended up hiring. But I challenge you to go back through your diary and don't wait for a good week. There'll never be a good week. Go back through your diary. 2 weeks is a good starting point. 4 weeks is chef's kiss. And we're going to red, amber, green it. So we're going to traffic light code your diary. Green is could outsource with no training. Amber is could outsource with a little bit of training. An example for me might be like HR stuff. Reviewing CVs and picking who I want to interview. And then red is it has to be me. I guarantee you we're going to see a green amber situation with very little red. And the more green and amber you delegate, the more you can do more of the red stuff, which increases your revenue, increases your internal charge out rate, and makes you more profit.
And I think some of it, for me at least, was a bit of I realised a mindset shift of investing in myself. I feel like that's a very used term at the moment, that it almost felt like, oh my God, I've just come up with a cliche. But genuinely thinking about it as, do I back myself that if I have more of that time, to your point, on the hard stuff that I actually can't outsource, that I will increase sales? Well, actually, yeah, I do. So I should be doing that. And actually, that's a much better way to spend my time. And I guess the other thing is, don't forget the enjoyable parts in there as well. So you don't just lose everything that gives you energy because actually you loved, I don't know, doing the content for the, that's actually quite hard to outsource.
But again, that's another really great audit that you could do in your diary. Is just go and circle the stuff that brought you joy. And say to your VA, can I get more of this, please?
Yeah, exactly. I'm never doing another VAT return. That's mine.
Exactly. And it's great for me in consulting because normally it ends up with people outsourcing their VAT and bookkeeping because they're like, I do not like this.
Goodbye.
So it's wins for everyone.
Love that. I wonder if you could also just explain monk mode for anyone who's curious. I mean, it terrifies me as someone who's both not a morning person and also quite ADHD. So I struggle to actually do the kind of deep focus planned. Sometimes that happens, but it's very hyperfixated rather than here's your scheduled time. So how does monk mode work? And what have you found are some ways to make it, I guess, adaptable for other people who aren't quite you and don't have your 5 till 7 a.m. stint?
Cool. I think the first thing for me when I became self-employed was the concept that productivity has to be painful. Was really something that I was like, I unsubscribe. I just really fundamentally feel like it doesn't. And when I would think back to my employed life and was really trying to focus on when was I the most productive, it was never when it was painful. It's not cold showers, it's not any of that stuff. It's, does it feel right? Does it serve me? Does it set me up for the best day? And so that was 50% of it. The other 50% was necessity. I am a founder who has bootstrapped a team. I probably needed a PA years ago. And actually for me, I have an inbox where I can get over 100 emails a day, but also I have a business to grow and scale and to really be present, to focus on community and impact. And so I got to the point where I've always been quite a morning person. And so monk mode for me is head down, deep focus work. I prioritize comfort. So we're talking a salt lamp on, diffuser, coffee. I'm in an Udi. There's no makeup. I've got a hair mask in, face mask on. It's a vibe. And it's really intentionally doing those things at the same time to just remind yourself that I have autonomy over my time. I can do what I want when I want. But also it keeps it very separate to my actual day where I'm wearing horrible things like a bra whilst working. Just kidding,
great things like beautiful, beautiful pink outfits.
Yeah, exactly. And so intentionally keeping it very separate, literally wearing pajamas with an Udi over the top. I work in shed quarters in my back garden, and so like just waddle out in my sliders to the shed. And from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. depending on the day, I do head down deep focus work. So I operate on inbox zero. My inbox gets cleared every single day. Categorize my inbox into quick ticks, tasks, and projects. And so quick ticks, they just get cleared. A quick tick is anything that I can do in 10 minutes or less. And then tasks and projects get scheduled into my schedule for the day, which I share on social media just to break down the barriers. Grace Beverly shares her schedule. I'm a cult follower of Grace Beverly, just as a female founder with a personality.
You asked me earlier who I want on the podcast. I would love Grace Beverly. I'm just putting it out on all channels.
Yeah.
She's still not accepted yet, but it's going to happen.
I have a head-to-toe picture of Grace Beverly on my vision board.
Stop it.
Like head to toe. Yeah.
I mean, she's wild. She's looking great in all her tala, so it's important to feature everything.
Amen. But yeah, so head down, deep focus work so that I can be focused on growing the business, not just, I could sit and clear my inbox all day, and never get anything else done. But I literally just unsubscribe from doing that. And so have dedicated time. Again, the time, the being somewhere different, not wearing people clothes, looking different, it being before I start my day is very intentional, so that from 9 a.m. when the team turn their computers on, I'm present, I'm active, I can respond to the day, which will notoriously go in a direction that I didn't expect. But if I am trying to maintain my role and run the business at the same time, that's burnout land. Yeah.
We've nearly run out of time, so I have to do the final two questions. There's just so much more we can talk about. I'm going to begrudgingly stitch time so I don't make our editor's life a living nightmare. But first question, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received as a business owner, founder?
I have a mantra. So I actually didn't receive this, but it's my favourite bit of advice to give out. I think it's very easy for people to see what I've done within the business and to view it as super successful very, very quickly. And I think through doing that, very often you can crave the quick tick announcements, the stuff that you know would hit on LinkedIn, the Forbes articles. And actually, my mantra has always been the opposite, which is that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And actually, if you are really intentionally scaling and you are focusing on delivering the right product and the right service at the right level, that's your marketing. Other people will go out and shout about you, do your marketing, advocate you, whether that's in the Love Island villa or to their mate down the pub. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, which is way better than running a business in sprints or, rounds or raises. And slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
And we've talked so much about that idea of building sustainably, financially sustainably from a personal space. Love that. Final question. Very curious. What is the moment you're proudest of so far?
I'd say 2024 has been a really big year for me in terms of change. I started weekly therapy halfway through 2023, and I've always in my head viewed 2024 as the year I put myself first. As someone that was raised as a carer, I'm 10 minutes older, so I had 10 minutes of my life where I didn't feel responsible for someone else who has really high needs. 2024 will always be the benchmark of my mind of the year that I put myself first. And I've seen incredible things in my personal and professional life since doing that. And I could list off 17 LinkedIn worthy announcements. But yeah, for me, putting myself first is by far the best thing I've ever done.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. What a note to end on. Rachel, thank you so much
for
coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Before you go, please do take a minute to follow so you never miss another episode. We have some incredible founders coming up.
And I always love to hear what resonates with listeners. So do drop us a direct message on Instagram @NotMyFirstGuest with any moments that meant something to you, ideas for future episodes, or your own entrepreneurial stories you want to share. Until next time, happy startupping.